and welcome to Lip Service, a podcast that adventures around and all down the line with the Rolling Stones. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Simon Harper, and I shall be your host for this series of conversations that celebrate the life and music of the greatest rock and roll band in the world. We've got sights and sounds and marvels to delight your eyes and ears, so join us as we journey down the road a piece, from Dartford days to Hackney Diamonds and beyond, exploring the songs and stories from along the way with friends and special guests. Today's guest is Karl Denson, saxophonist for the Rolling Stones, who has performed with the band on every tour since 2014, stepping into the role made legendary by Bobby Keys. A lifelong musician whose career spans jazz clubs, funk collectives and stadium stages, Karl grew up in Orange County, immersed in soul, Motown and jazz, before forging a path that balanced artistic independence with life working alongside some of the biggest names in modern music. A bandleader, composer and vocalist in his own right, he is best known outside the Stones for his work with the Greyboy Allstars and Tiny Universe, projects that helped reframe jazz as dance music for a new generation in the 90s, while keeping one foot firmly in the lineage of funk, soul and boogaloo. In our conversation, Karl traces that journey from his early years discovering jazz to the moment he realised music wasn't just a passion but a vocation. He talks about touring with O'Brien, understanding the realities of the road, and how working with artists like Lenny Kravitz and Fred Wesley shaped his sense of groove, discipline and musical generosity. That path ultimately led him to the Rolling Stones, after a personal recommendation direct from Kravitz to Mick Jagger. Karl reflects on the surreal speed with which he went from a phone call to rehearsals, his reverence for Bobby Keys' parts, and what it means to honour those iconic sax lines while slowly making space for his own voice. Along the way, we talk about touring with the Stones, the importance of the hang as much as the playing, absorbing musical influences from around the world, sharing his love of jazz with Charlie Watts, and how watching Mick Jagger night after night has subtly informed Karl's own approach as a frontman. It's a conversation recorded in two parts that reflects Karl's open-ended approach to music. Curious, collaborative, and always in motion. Before we start, just a quick reminder to please, if you're enjoying Lip Service and the episode so far, to like, review and comment wherever you pick up your podcasts, as it really is vital in spreading the word and does help the show reach more people. Anyway, without any further ado, here is myself and Karl Denson. Karl, welcome to Lip Service.
Thank you very much for the invite.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. You've had a remarkable life in music and journey in music, from jazz clubs to stadiums, and I'd love to get into all of that with you. So let me take you back to where it all started. You grew up in Orange County. You were the fifth of six kids. So growing up, what kind of music was playing in your home?
Well, I'm a kid. I was born in '56. So when I was very young, I was hearing, early Motown, soul, and kind of a really rich period, in terms of going from, true R&B to soul to funk. Like by the time I was in high school, I was in junior high school. I'm hearing Sly and the Family Stone and Jimi Hendrix, but early on it was like, I remember one of my earliest memories of music in the house was my sister bought a 45 by the Dixie Cups. Mm-hmm. Going to the chapel.
Yes.
Going to the chapel and we're gonna get. So that was like a current hit at the time. So I came up in that era, and then luckily by the time I was about 12 or 13, my older brother started listening to jazz. So I became a jazz kid, all through junior high school and high school.
So that wasn't something that you inherited from your parents?
No, my parents were busy working. They didn't play music.
No.
I didn't know what my mom and dad listened to until I was an adult.
What was the age difference then between your siblings?
Well, my oldest brother is 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
And then I got a sister under him, a year and a half under him, and then a brother 2 years below her, and then a brother 2 years below him, and then I'm 4 years below that brother, and then my sister is 2 years younger than me.
Yeah, so that's a good demographic of different music, right? A way for you to access it?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely had I had influence, in the house. I had influences.
I read that you inherited your first saxophone after one of your brothers discarded his. Had you been interested in the instrument when he was playing it? Was it something that was thrust upon you?
Yeah, I was interested in it, and yeah, and he kind of ran out of steam. He was a really great athlete, and so he kind of played saxophone for a few minutes, and we all played a little bit. It was that thing of having good public schools that provided music classes if you wanted them. So I took some kind of test in fourth grade, and I had the aptitude. And so and in fourth grade, I made the mistake of playing cello.
Right.
Somehow I got talked into cello. I wish I could go back and find and hear that conversation, because I wanted to play saxophone, but somehow I got talked into cello, and that didn't really stick. So at seventh grade, I went back to cello. I mean, back to saxophone, and I just was doing it because it was kind of something you did. I took one of my classes was a music class, and so I took that, and I was in that little seventh grade band, and then eighth grade band, and then ninth grade band. I just did it that way, and I wasn't thinking like I'm going to be a musician or anything. It was just the kind of the balance of academics, art, and whatever.
Yeah. And where did you form groups when you were in school to do something out with the classes?
Yes, we I had barely been playing saxophone a year, and we started a band called Just Funk.
Yeah. Great name.
And yeah, it was super fun. And I'm actually I changed my flight home so that I can do a little kind of a Motown cover band with the lead singer from Just Funk.
Wow.
So we still play together every so often.
It's like a class reunion.
Yeah, exactly.
So what kind of music were you playing? Was it just funk?
Just Funk it was a mixture of like Sly and the Family Stone and Jimi Hendrix, very Jimi Hendrix, Ohio Players, definitely a psychedelic element to it. Buddy Miles. Um, these guys did a lot of they were doing a lot of acid at that time.
Yes.
Very, very interestingly young for doing that, but there was a lot of Hendrix influence. So we played a lot of Hendrix tunes, Sly, Mandrill. Um, yeah, it was very cool band.
You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the OC is about an hour from like downtown Los Angeles. Is that about right?
Yes, yeah.
Uh, in the 60s, that's obviously a hotbed of action. There's a lot going on, the clubs on Sunset and everything. Were you aware of what was going on there musically? Did you get to go up and see anything?
Not really. I was a little too young for that. I didn't. I mean, I started at about 16. I was gigging actively, so I was, doing a lot of running around in LA, but I wasn't really. I couldn't go to the clubs. I mean, I was a jazz guy, so I really only wanted to. I was only worried about jazz things.
Yeah.
Like I remember vividly being 16 or 15, and Herbie Hancock was at the Lighthouse, the famous Lighthouse, and it was with the M1DC band, um, with Buster Williams and Julian Priester, and um, very, very what do you call it? Experimental Herbie period, and I couldn't get anybody to take me to LA, and I literally sat in my room, and as the time drew near, I shed a few tears. I was so frustrated that I didn't get to go to LA to see that band. So I didn't really get to go and see any music until after I was 18. Then I started going to LA, but it was really for just jazz. That's what I was interested in.
Yeah. Was it a good jazz scene in LA?
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
everyone knows about New York and 52nd Street and everything and Birdland, but
It was just
LA had its own scene.
it was just a great period of music. Yusef Lateef, Rahsaan Roland Kirk. There was some Freddie Hubbard, Herbie Hancock. There was like that's when they were happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a great scene.
Who did you get to see then when you started going to gigs?
I saw McCoy Tyner like many times. I saw Yusef Lateef many times. I saw Rahsaan Roland Kirk a couple of times. Joe Henderson many times. Herbie Hancock many times. Yeah, I mean whatever was Chick Corea, Keith Jarrett. I that's what I did.
Yeah. You said earlier that you weren't thinking about career as a music. I mean, you were on course to be a vet, right? You were studying veterinarianism at
Right.
college, but then suddenly you're lured away to play music. What did your folks think about that?
Not much.
They couldn't have been happy, surely.
They were not impressed with that choice. And I wasn't really very financially driven. So I tend to be a bohemian at heart. And that didn't make them happy either. The fact that I was willing to live kind of in squalor for my art
Yeah.
is not really the choice. I remember when I bought my first house, my mom just looked at my ex-wife and said, I never thought this could happen.
But that goes hand in hand with jazz musicians, right?
You know what? You know what, Simon? The I had the biggest epiphany I had, the most important epiphany I had was I must have been probably 19, and I had gone to see there was a jazz festival in LA, and it was Ronnie Laws, Hubert Laws, McCoy Tyner, and George Benson. That was the lineup. So I was really there mostly for Hubert Laws and McCoy Tyner. George Benson had moved on to his masquerade singing period, so I wasn't as interested in that. But McCoy Tyner was playing. I was seeing him a lot at the time, and he had my favorite drummer in the world, Transcending Sunship. And his real name was Woody Thues, and he changed his name to Transcending Sunship. And he was just a freaking force of nature. And he played no regular ride cymbals. They were all pangs, the China pangs.
Yes, yeah.
So they'd be swinging, and he'd be going. It was just so bombastic and amazing, and he was my favorite thing in the world. And so after the concert was over, I snuck onto the stage to meet him, and he was putting his drums away. And I was a little bit taken back by the fact that he was putting his own drums away, because I considered him a rock star. And then I said, well, you want some help putting your, and so he said, yeah, give me a hand. And then he pulled up his car to the loading dock. And it was an old Electra 225, or as we would call in the hood, a deuce and a quarter. And it was just, the slang for it would be a hoopty. It was an old, raggedy, big ass car. And I was just floored by the fact that I thought this guy would be rich.
Yeah.
And it made an impression on me where I said, you know what, I better find a pop gig to support my jazz habit.
Well, isn't that what happened, right? You joined the backing band of the emerging soul singer O'Brien, and you got to tour with him for a few years, and you were fresh out of college. What was that like?
That was amazing. It was, and it was, we grew up together. He was a few years me, but one of my best friends was his cousin. And and I got to see the country, with O'Brien, and it was kind of the beginning of me learning how to make records, and we're learning how to record and all that stuff. And we worked for Don Cornelius.
Great,
from Soul Train.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to hang out with Don Cornelius. That was just incredible, and really became friends with him. And like me and my buddy Melvin would go to his house for Christmas. Even after the band was done, we would go see Don for Christmas, before Christmas, and hang out with him. And but yeah, it got me going. But I always wanted to have my own band. So during and after O'Brien, I always had a jazz, either a quartet or a quintet that I was writing for, and I eventually ended up with a really good kind of steady gig in Orange County, playing a few clubs there, so I had my jazz band working for several years.
Why did you want to have your own band? Why did you want to be a band leader?
Because I wanted to play jazz, and I realized as a jazz guy, you needed to. I just considered writing to be part of being a real jazz musician, and so I was writing my own music, and I wanted to play it. So you had to have a band, and then in order to have a band, you have to have gigs so you can support the band. So I kind of just became a band leader.
Yeah. Again, thinking of the Los Angeles scene, someone that, like me, that kind of really loves the kind of alternative scene of the 80s, LA spawned Guns N' Roses, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Jane's Addiction. So there's a very healthy club scene, but again, was the jazz scene okay in the 80s?
The jazz scene is the jazz scene. There's no money in it. But there's lots of people that love jazz.
That's what I mean. So there's a good kind of community.
Yeah, I was playing. I was not making very much money, but I was playing, and this was mainly in Orange County. There was, I was down by the beach, kind of playing for the, there was a few clubs down there that were jazz clubs, and so I would play 2, 3, 4 nights a week there, and then sometimes it'd be like a yacht club, that needed a happy hour band or something like that. So I was just playing wherever I could play, and it was, the jazz thing. It's an interesting study, because I was like, as wanting to be a writer, I realized I didn't really want to play standards, like for a living. I didn't want to play jazz standards. I wanted to play original music. So, I realized what a hard slug it was going to be.
Yeah.
That's why I always kept my foot a little bit in the pop door.
Speaking of which, I believe it was in 1988 that you first met Lenny Kravitz. He soon invited you to play on his debut album. What did you see in Lenny that drew him to you as an artist?
Well, I think we had done sessions with Lenny, years prior. The last trumpet player with O'Brien grew up with Lenny.
Right.
So that's how I met Lenny. And then, so we started, doing we did a few sessions for him here and there, because he was trying to be a producer. And, but when we did the Let Love Rule album, I remember, I came to New York this is like the summer of 88. And I recorded the solo on Let Love Rule. And I remember, I went home, and, I thought it was cool. It was very cool. And during the 80s, I had played with a bunch of black rock bands that were great, but could never get signed because they were black and they were playing rock and roll. So it was like a really strange thing. And then I remember seeing Tracy Chapman pop on the scene, and she kind of broke the mold and was like the black girl who played rock and roll. And so with Lenny, he was kind of breaking the mold of not using drum machines and things like that, and back to live musicians, which was very interesting from a black perspective. And so when I came to New York in 88, we recorded Let Love Rule, and I thought, this is kind of cool, from the rock and roll standpoint, and it's good music, and it's a black guy. But then when I came back in, I think maybe 6 months later, he called me and said, hey, the record company really loved your solo, and so I'm going to have you come to New York and help me finish up the record. And when I heard the rest of the record, I was completely flabbergasted, because it was so good and so forward thinking, like um, what do you call it? I Build This Garden for Us and Fear, like that whole record was sitting on top of the world. Like it was just like, whoa, dude, you're onto something. So I was uh, very impressed and very excited about where Lenny could go with that because it was really groundbreaking when I heard it.
I mean, it made quite an impact upon release. It really put Lenny on the map, and he was an ascending star.
Yeah,
Were you kind of caught up in the hysteria around it? Were you touring with him and got to see his star?
yeah. I mean, we were in Zurich, Switzerland, and Yoko Ono showed up
Right.
backstage, and we were just like, so, it was kind of like that. Like the record was he didn't have a hit on the record, which was disappointing for him,
Hmm.
but the critical acclaim was undeniable.
Lenny is someone well, he's a multi-instrumentalist, and he played a lot of the stuff on the album. You went back onto the second album, Mama Said, and contributed the horns to that. What's the dynamic like there? Do you have freedom to play what you wanted, or did he have a very set creative vision of what he wanted you to play?
When it came when they're horn parts, he definitely was dictating. The solos are completely my take on it,
Hmm.
which is kind of what made it fun. When I listened back to it, like the other day, I actually had a show with Lenny this past weekend, and I haven't played with him since 2008. But his sax player had to have some surgery, so I subbed for a couple of shows. And on my way out, Lenny called me to his bus, and we're talking, and he's we're laughing about the fact that some of that is like what we would play now is completely different than what we would play then. And so he pulled up that solo from What Goes Around Comes Around, and made me listen to it again. It was like, dude, this is freaking what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it was a very um, it was a very musically nurturing experience for the most part with doing the early Lenny Kravitz. I call it the golden years.
How did it feed into what you were doing personally then? When you went back to your own band, did what you were doing in the rock realm feed into your jazz stuff?
I think it just gave me a maybe a clearer vision of what I wanted to do, and um, how the work goes. Lenny used to always say, "Don't make a record for live. Make a record to make a record, and then figure out what to do with it when you play live." And that was one of the big takeaways I got from him because he would orchestrate things out in a way that I would think, oh, how are we going to pull this off live? But he's like, don't ever worry about that. Just make the record, and then you'll figure it out later.
And technology has obviously helped over the years.
Yes, exactly. There's ways to slice bread.
Someone else notable that you played with in the early 90s was Fred Wesley, the legendary trombonist. I mean, he'd played with Parliament Funkadelic, James Brown, and even Count Basie. That must have been like a masterclass.
Yeah, it was. And Fred's like his real gift to me was teaching me to he kind of got me over the idea of they call it demoitis. When you make a demo of a song, sometimes you get a little too stuck to it, and you don't have the ability to set the song free. And Fred always had a way of allowing us to do exactly what we wanted to do, and he would only rein us in on rare occasions when it was like really over the edge, where you're like, okay, he's like, okay, pull that back just a little bit. But in general, he really let us speak, and I learned from him to do that with my musicians, to really let them have their own voice, and then occasionally you rein them in, but the most fun you're going to have and the most honest expression you're going to get is if you allow everybody to have their own voice.
Was he somebody that you'd seen live when you were younger? You must have seen Funkadelic or Parliament.
I was a James Brown kid,
All right, yeah.
so I was I remember being at a party in probably seventh grade, sixth grade, and hearing the Big Payback for the first time, and being like, "What the fuck is that?" You know,
Yeah,
like as a 12-year-old, just going, "Whoa,
I
some,
imagine.
something just happened," and and that was Fred Wesley, and so I recognized him from that early age.
Well, a new significant chapter in your life opened up after you met rare groove tastemaker DJ Greyboy around that time, the early 90s. What was it that connected you two earlier on? And, what plans were you making together?
Greyboy showed up at a gig that I had with my buddy Derek from Just Funk in Laguna, California, and he knew somebody from my high school, but he met somebody from my high school who knew me, and he was looking. It was funny because I was in Europe at the time. This is 91, 92 when I probably 91 when I met Greyboy, and I had just been traveling in Europe with Lenny, and I always loved dance music, so I would go to the clubs and hear what was going on, and I remember hearing the acid jazz movement start.
Yeah.
Started hearing samples of these great records that I grew up with. Grant Green and Boogaloo Joe Jones and Herbie Hancock. Sampled like the Tribe Called Quest stuff, and I was kind of like my ears perked up, and I thought, I think my time is coming. And and they were using live musicians. Along with the DJs, they were using live musicians. So that's kind of what was going on. And then I met DJ Greyboy, and he understood the word boogaloo, which for me was the whole key to everything, because the to me, like as a from a black standpoint, I feel like jazz being dance music, has its, the roots are in dance, and so if you watch the way it progresses, it goes from swing to Dizzy Gillespie, going to to the Cuban Afro-Cuban style, and straightening out the eighth notes, which became boogaloo, which became funk, which became James Brown,
Yeah.
which became funk, which became everything. So the fact that I was kind of like a big fan of the concept of. Are you familiar with the song Sidewinder by Lee Morgan?
Uh, Probably if I heard it, but not off
Yeah,
the top of my
yeah.
head.
So like there's a Lee Morgan tune Sidewinder, or a Wayne Shorter tune, Tom Thumb, which everybody should be familiar with. But they kind of are the beginnings of this like move towards funk in jazz, and that's where Tribe Called Quest and Gangstar Guru, where all that kind of went back to the jazz roots from the rock stuff that they were sampling before that.
Yeah.
So that was where Greyboy and I, coalesced, is around the Boogaloo idea, which ended up, we made a couple of records together, and then we created the Greyboy Allstars, which is still around, and it's a Boogaloo band.
So he was obviously like a kindred spirit. So what was the vision for the All Stars then?
The Allstars were, we thought he wanted to be in the band, but he just wanted somebody to play these tunes. He just wanted to curate the music. So we ended up, he just would feed us, Grant Green tracks, the tracks that were hitting in the clubs at
Yeah.
the time. Grant Green, or a Boogaloo Joe Jones, or a Rusty Bryant, or a Gene Ammons track, and we would play them. But then we immediately started writing ourselves, because the band's a very talented band. So we immediately started writing our own tunes, and just kind of turned into a Boogaloo band, and he never had any interest in being in the band, which we thought he did, but so he just kind of let the thing fly away, and and here we are 30 years later, and we're still playing together.
Absolutely. And one of the good things about the All Stars was because you're taking jazz to the dance floor, you're almost making it like more accessible. You're making it sort of understandable, losing the stigma around it.
We were having the time of our life. I'm talking like 94 to 98 when we were, in our heyday. I would be cracking up. We'd be in a dance club, we'd be in a rock club or a pop club, whatever, and we'd be playing a Horace Silver tune, and kids are dancing to it. And I'm looking at the band, going, "We're getting away with murder here." Like and because it was so fresh for them, they thought we wrote half that stuff. And we did a good job of mixing our stuff in with it. But Fire Eater by Melvin Sparks or a Rusty Bryant tune, they thought we wrote it because they had never heard that kind of music before.
But also, you're playing it with such a unique energy as well. It probably doesn't sound like something from the past.
I mean, we were really kind of curating it in its purest form. So it was really just that they had never heard those records. I mean, those records are literally the records like a black kid would see at his uncle's house. Mm-hmm. At that time in the world in the early 90s, nobody was hearing Grant Green records or Boogaloo Joe Jones or Melvin Sparks. Nobody was listening to those records. They were very obscure jazz records. Mm-hmm. So we were basically playing them as close to the original as we could. Nobody had heard it except for these DJs who were digging in the crates. So that's what made it hip, because had these kids who, I mean, Greyboy, when I met him, he was in his early 20s, and he'd been DJing for a few years, and he had created a whole scene in San Diego based on just grabbing these old records and curating a set list night after night where these kids would come and dance to what they thought was the newest, freshest thing, which was actually, circa 1970 to 74.
The All Stars were on hiatus when you decided to create your own band again, something different, Tiny Universe, around about 1998. The All Stars were a democracy, something where you all had a say, but with Tiny Universe, you were the boss. So what direction were you looking to take Tiny Universe?
I was trying to continue what the All Stars were in terms of the boogaloo, but also I wanted to write vocal tunes more. I wanted to sing more and have it be a little bit more, it was my thing. So between having to learn how to write, I mean, the All Stars are very prolific in how they write because it's such a democracy and everybody's so talented. So it was a major undertaking for me to try to write enough material and to curate the whole thing for myself. But I wanted to also add, a vocal element that was more, with All Stars, it was maybe the vocals were maybe 10-15% at the most. I wanted more of a 50-50 blend of vocals and instrumentals.
So as the main composer then, how has your songwriting developed over the years?
Oh, it's just a continual struggle,
Struggle.
Writing lyrics is the bane of my existence. I don't know why I have chosen this path, but I have these ideas in my head and they have to do with vocals. So I'm always confronted with the task of saying something.
Yeah. Well, hence the 50-50 balance then. You only need to write half the amount of lyrics.
Yes, exactly.
So you toured again with Lenny Kravitz in 2008, and it was Lenny that would recommend you for the job that you hold today. So can you explain the circumstances of how you came to the attention of the Stones?
Well, Lenny was having dinner with Mick Jagger, and Lenny and Craig Ross, his guitar player, were having dinner with Mick Jagger, and Mick mentioned that Bobby Keys was ill and that they needed to have someone sub for him. The their original idea was they were going to have somebody come in and sub for him, and then when he got well, probably keep them on so he wouldn't have to work as hard. And Lenny immediately threw my hat in the ring. So within a couple of days, Lenny calls me, and I didn't answer his phone call a few times because it was an unlisted number, and then I finally answered it because of it. Luckily, he was persistent, and it was at a very strange time where I had resigned myself to, this is what you're doing. You're not going to make $1 million, but you're surviving. So continue, and I don't need any more touring gigs. I've got enough road work. I'm going to be home as much as I can, other than what I have on my plate. And so when Lenny mentioned, hey, I got somebody that needs a sax player to go on the road, I said, I don't think so. I got enough going on, Lenny. And he said, I think you might want to look at this one. And so when he told me it was the Rolling Stones, it was just, like a lightning bolt struck me. And within a week, I was on the phone with Mick, and got the gig.
Well, how did that conversation go?
Well, it was very casual. I mean, it probably was 15 minutes, and he basically called to hire me because I sent over a few things that I had done, and Lenny sent him a few things, and he had played them for the band. So he basically, we got on the phone and we, exchanged pleasantries, and then he said, I listened to your stuff and sounds great, and I played it for the rest of the guys and they liked it. So, basically, are you interested in doing the Rolling Stones gig? And I was like, hell yes.
Yeah. And you were thrown in at the deep end. I believe there was like 2 weeks of rehearsals in Australia before they resumed their 14 on Fire tour. Now, I presume you were kind of aware of the Rolling Stones and their music, but how au fait were you with the horn lines?
You know what? It wasn't a hard gig because I had actually become a Bobby Keys fan very young. When I was probably 19, 20 years old, I realized who he was because people would, these guys that would always come up to me at the clubs when I started playing more pop stuff in the clubs, they would always come up and go, play some Bobby Keys, man. And I had no idea who that was. But then after 3 or 4 of them, I thought, I better find out who Bobby Keys is. And when I realized he was this Rolling Stones guy, that made sense. And what he was doing made sense to me. So I had been studying it off and on for years. And we had actually done a Sticky Fingers tour probably 3 years before. So I was very familiar with the Rolling Stones. It was kind of the perfect saxophone pop rock gig for me.
So you're the new guy in the group, and you obviously want to ingratiate yourself in the band and get to know the guys well. But were you concerned at all? Because obviously Keith Richards had a very close relationship with Bobby. Were you concerned that he might have that kind of affinity with Bobby? He might not take to you?
No, not so much. I mean, I looked at it as really, right in my wheelhouse because I have so much respect for Bobby that I played those solos verbatim for the first tour, and then I didn't really stretch out and start doing my own thing, even though like on Can't You Hear Me Knocking, like I had the unbelievable blessing of them being the 50th year of that record, Sticky Fingers, and they did a show where they did the whole record, and
Yeah.
I got to play those couple of solos, and so I got to kind of express myself in my own way there, but I really, they knew that I had so much reverence for Bobby that it was never really a question.
Obviously, you and Charlie Watts shared a deep love of jazz. He was known to jam with you as well at some after show parties. Tell me about your friendship with Charlie. What was he like to be around?
Charlie was a guy that if you could get him to crack a smile, you, let alone a chuckle. You felt like you really had done something, because he was just so dry and so amazing. He was really funny. Like his 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 sense of humor was just unbelievable, and his style and everything about him was so on point that he was just surprising in that way. And I have the honor of I'm not sure how this works, but Charlie Watts called me mysterious. he, he walked up to me one day, and he saw me and he said, "The mysterious Karl Denson." And I thought, yes, I've made it.
I mean, coming from someone like Charlie, an enigma wrapped in an enigma.
Exactly. Like he was just like, I always wanted to ask him if he understood the naive artist that he was as a drummer. But I knew he would look at me with a blank stare and act like he didn't understand what I was saying. But he was such an incredible artist, like listening to him play. It was always these little surprises that he had. And I mean, I can remember, several times where I would be sitting somewhere or maybe sitting with his drum tech and we're talking and the Stones are rehearsing in the background. And then Charlie plays a fill and I just go, oh, come on. Like, what was that? Because it's just so interesting the way he approached the drums.
I mean, he never played the same thing twice.
Yes. And it was just I mean, really, he was like a Gauguin or one of those guys. Like he painted in this really primitive style, but better than anybody. Like Van Gogh or Gauguin or like that's what he reminded me of.
So you've been playing sax alongside Tim Reese, who's been with the Stones since 1999. How quickly did you form a bond with Tim, and how have you learned to like complement each other's playing?
It was pretty instantaneous. He's a very likable guy and really fun and funny. And so, and I've been on the road, for most of my life. So I know that the biggest part of the gig is the hang, and that's something that Mick brought up in the in my interview with him was, you know, um, how do I feel about the hang on the road? Because, he's like, the playing's not that hard. It really is about the hang,
Well,
and
it's about 2 or 3 hours a night, isn't it? So that's
yeah,
that leaves 21 hours a day.
yeah. And Tim and I we play about 30% of the show. So we're backstage the whole time, and we're like the old men on the Muppets up in the balcony.
Statler and
And
Waldorf.
yeah, exactly. And but yeah, we get along great. And, like I just had dinner with him the other night in New York. He's doing great. He's on his way back to Europe right now.
So when you guys are not playing, when it's not your turn, what are you guys doing backstage?
Oh, gossiping. And literally, I'm telling you, man, we got self-help programs, we've got yoga, we've got, you know, a multitude of things. I also have as I call it, my Rolling Stones practice tape. So, while the band's playing, I'm practicing to the band. So that's always fun.
We've talked about Bobby Keys and how much you kind of revered him, but when you're playing the songs that his saxophone playing is so iconic on those songs, how do you sort of pay tribute to or stay faithful to the lines that he's done, but then make them your own?
I always start with learning verbatim what is there, and I find that that's the best way to always kind of have a grasp of what it is you're emulating. So from that standpoint, like all the solos that I play, I know exactly what Bobby played well enough to refer back to it where I feel like it's necessary. So there's always the sound of that.
It's like the kind of the base point.
Yeah, yeah. Like when my band, when we learn a cover tune, by somebody else, I always make sure they really learn the tune verbatim first
Yeah.
before we start playing with it. And it just because I like to write. You know, I'm a writer. I consider myself a writer, so I always like to stay true to the artist intention kind of thing.
I mean, being with the Stones and traveling the world and meeting people from all walks of life in all different countries, it must have broadened your world outlook. How has that kind of transferred into your own music?
I mean, you know, I traveled the world before I joined the Stones, so I've been traveling since I was 25, and you know, and I hadn't gone to South America yet, like I did with the Stones, but I had been, you know, most other places. Um, so it's really just about how you're traveling. The Stones is just like the luxury vacation,
Yeah,
you know. Like
five star all the way.
yeah, I've been on the family, you know, the family grinded vacations, and now we go on the luxury vacation where we actually get to. Yeah, I would say the best thing about the Stones touring is because we only play a couple of times a week. We really get to see where you are.
Yeah, and appreciate your surroundings.
Yeah, you get to walk around and get to know the city, and you know, like there's several cities now in the world that I feel like I know pretty well from being with the Stones.
Has it broadened your musical outlook, sort of appreciating different cultures and different musics?
Yeah, there's definitely some things that we've run into that I would have not found without them. There was we were playing, we were doing Uruguay during the South American tour, and we showed up, and you know we had already been to Argentina and Chile, and I'm not sure if we'd been to Brazil yet, but you know we Colombia, we'd been to some bigger countries, and and Uruguay is kind of like, you know, that's kind of like you remember it from your geography class, and that's it. It's just Uruguay and Paraguay, like
Yeah.
those are those little places. And so I didn't really expect anything of this place. And we roll in, and I get into my room, and the TV's on, and I'm unpacking my stuff, and just happens that some music comes on the TV, and it's these it's these like, you know, 50, 40, 50 guys on a stage with these big drums, and they've got a stick in one hand. The drum heads are white, and they've got the flat hats with the dingle balls hanging around them, you know.
Yeah.
And honestly, musically, I only care about funk. You know, like I'm a funk guy. I want to know what the funkiest thing is. So I'm looking at these guys with the dingle balls on their hat, and I'm thinking this isn't going to be funky. And they dropped the beat, and it was the craziest funk I'd ever heard in my life. And it was that was my introduction to candombe. It's kind of the roots of the whole Afro-Cuban, like Brazilian, that whole thing. It's like where the beat is,
Hmm.
and super funky and crazy. And like I spent the next hour on YouTube looking up candombe music, and then the next day I get in the van to go to the gig, and I say to Bernard, I said, "Have you ever heard of candombe music?" And he goes, "Me and Mick were in the hills yesterday all day with one of the foremost drummers and drum makers. Like they spent the day hanging out with one of these guys." So you know, and then I discovered this guy, Ruben Rada.
Right.
Oh man, amazing! He's like the John Lennon of South America, but just super crazy good. And it, you know, so yeah, you never know where you're gonna find it.
So you've played on every tour since 2014. Is there a particular show that stands out as a favorite?
I would have to say the Argentina show or shows. We did two of them. That was kind of just a mind blowing experience because you know when we were rehearsing for the tour, the guys in the band kept saying, "Wait till you get to Argentina, you're gonna trip. They're completely mad, you know." And and we got there, and it was kind of like a block party in front of the hotel from the time we got there until we left. And you know, like they're playing Rolling Stones music. There's a Mick Jagger impersonator out there dancing all day, and then we played the show, and the people sang so freaking loud. Like every single person in the stadium was singing at the top of their voice. It was really amazing. So I would have to say that show, and then I think it was our show in Bolivia. Pretty sure it was Bolivia, where it rained torrentially, and but you know they never cancel shows. So you know, watching Mick out there, I took some pictures, and it was like a Michael Jackson video. Like
Yeah.
he had a little fedora on, and the rain's coming down, and he's dancing, and it was just, oh, that was insane.
So I believe that you haven't actually appeared on a Rolling Stones record yet. I mean, you've had Blue and Lonesome and Hackney Diamonds in the time that you've been in the band. Is it the hope that one day you will appear on record?
Actually, Simon, I am um I got the solos on the Sticky Fingers live record.
Ah, yes, of course.
Yeah, I just happened to join the band right at that, just before that, and because I had played, I like my audition tape was my band playing "Can't You Hear Me Knocking."
Yeah.
We did a tour, a Rolling Stones tribute tour, Sticky Fingers at one point, and so I just lucked out, and because Mick had heard me play that, I kind of kept that solo, and then I got the Brown Sugar solo, so you know, I got to play those two solos on the Sticky Fingers live record.
And you've actually borrowed, going back to your own band, you've actually borrowed Chuck Leavell from the Stones, who appeared on the Tiny Universe album Gnomes and Badgers.
Right.
Will you be tapping up any of the other bandmates to try and appear on a future release?
Yeah, actually, Bernard's already done some singing on my new record, and he's going to do some more. So, and I'm trying to get Tim out here to be part of the horn section.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that works.
How has your confidence as a vocalist changed or developed with watching a maestro like Mick on stage every night?
I would say not at all. I'm still not confident as a vocalist, but now singing is just, you know, it's one of those. It's just a practiced muscle, and you got to do it a lot. And
Yeah.
I'm do more and more. I'm trying to get the discipline to really, you know, practice singing at home as opposed to just practicing saxophone. I don't really usually find the time to do it, but I've been the last year or so, I've been really trying to, you know, I've got some vocal exercises that I do, you know, regularly, and I try to do them more and more regularly. And that's really the best thing for it. I think one of my favorite things about the Rolling Stones, musically, that I've been trying to develop is, Mick has a great way of, they have a great way of kind of mixing a little bit of irreverence into whatever song it is, whatever lyric they're writing. You know, like I remember at rehearsal, I don't think we've ever played the song live, but there's some song that he says, the girl with the, the girl with the crooked teeth or something, you know, to that effect. And there's always some kind of little line like that in his lyrics that catches your attention, you know. And you know, it could be the most innocuous song, like the nicest song, you know, like a loving cup or something, and you'll find some little lyric in there that just piques your interest enough where you said, oh, did he say that, you know. And I'm trying to do that with my own writing. It's like find those little things that nudge the ear.
Yeah, and also keep the audience kind of engaged as well because you're a front man.
Yeah, and just the adding the humor and the the cheekiness.
Yeah.
You need some of that cheekiness to make everybody comfortable.
You mentioned the word discipline there. I hear that you're a keen practitioner of Tai Chi, and I wonder, does this balance out the physical and mental demands of life on the road?
For sure. I mean, I definitely attribute my current longevity to the fact that I've been doing Tai Chi for 50 years now.
How is that a benefit to you?
Just keeps me in line, keeps my body lined up. It's really just a it's just like doing yoga. If I was doing yoga for all these years, it would be, it's the exact same thing. It's just keeping your spine straight, keeping your legs straight, keeping everybody strong, keeping your breathing correct, you know.
And your mind focused?
Yes, for sure. I'm not I wouldn't say I'm the most focused guy, but I am disciplined.
The most recent Greyboy Allstars album, Grab Bag, saw you guys digging into the vaults to get some unheard material. Was there going to be any new material coming up soon?
Yes. Um yeah, for sure. I mean, we're always writing. And right now we're kind of on a hiatus because Mike has Mike Andrews. He makes movies. He's a movie
Yeah.
soundtrack guy, so he's got a bunch of work to do. I think we get busy again in the spring, and then we've got a lot more stuff that we started recording. So our plan right now is to we'll probably do another similar release to Grab Bag, which is you release some of the stuff that we already have done, and then we've got the ambition of making a really we want to make a really ambitious record, like really spend a lot of time because we write very fast together, so it ends up coming out like it ends up coming out just like tracks, like kind of jazz tracks, and the idea for the next record, the next big record, is to actually spend time developing ideas and digging a little more.
There's been a real explosion of jazz and jazz influenced music in Britain, especially in the past few years. You had the Ezra Collective collecting the Mercury Music Prize in 2023, it was. And in America, you've got artists like Kamasi Washington really giving us kind of vital feel to the scene. Does it give you hope for the state of jazz at the moment and in the future?
Yes, I love what's happening right now. There's a I feel like we're in, like, I call it the fourth generation of music school kids who've had the internet. So they're going to school and they got all these great teachers. You got Ron Carter or Herbie Hancock. Is like the roving professors at these places, and then they can go on the internet and listen to everything and pick it apart. And so they're just playing great. And then when they get out, they decide what they want to do, and they do an amazing job at it.
And you're going to be hearing a lot of these acts, no doubt, because you're touring all the festivals, I believe, across this summer and across the US this year. Are there any plans to hit UK, Europe at any point?
We're working on it. We're working on it. We'll get there before you know it.
So, for any of these young guys that are coming up and girls coming through the jazz scene, do you have any words of advice that you could pull on your own history of being a youngster coming into the scene?
Um, I just say to everybody that I know, I just tell them to write like it's a job, because I think that's the most important thing you'll do for yourself, is to try to create your own environment when people come to see you, that they're coming to your ecosystem, and you do that by writing your own stuff.
I mean, it makes you unique. There's no one else that can do your songs.
Right, exactly.
Right, thank you, Carl. That brings us to 5 by 5, which is 5 regular quick-fire questions that we ask everybody.
Okay.
So, off the top of your head, what is your favorite Rolling Stones song?
I'm gonna have to pick Moonlight Mile.
What is your favourite Rolling Stones album?
I guess I don't know. I'm gonna have to. I would normally go with Sticky Fingers, but I think Exile on Main Street is on. It's taken over.
It pips it today, does it?
Yeah, that song. I just want to see his face. That's so random and so amazing that I return to that a lot.
What is a deep cut or underrated Stones track that you think deserves more love?
Oh, um, it's a Keith song through and through.
In your opinion, what makes the Rolling Stones such an enduring and influential band?
I think they managed to, my first response is going to be Keith and Mick, but then there's Charlie and 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 Ronnie. I just think they, their longevity, for one thing, the fact that they've all been able to, were able to stay healthy and alive and well for so long, but also there's a certain genius to that collective.
If you could describe the Rolling Stones in just 3 words, what would they be?
I only need one. I would call them authentic.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Karl.
Thank you, Simon. Good talking to you.
Thanks again for listening. We're almost at the end of Season 1 of Lip Service. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Hope you've enjoyed it all so far. I'd be very grateful if you can support the podcast by liking, commenting and reviewing the show wherever you get your podcasts to ensure that people get to hear about it and the show can continue. In the meantime, please make sure to follow us on all the socials where you'll find us at Stones Lip Pod. The last show of this run will be with you very soon. Till the next time, we say goodbye.